Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Young Emperor Haolian smiled. Then, with the spirit rat in one hand and the demon snake in the other, he tucked them into his arms and bowed slightly to prevent them from getting hurt. Layers of faint green light emerged from Haolian Xiaowang's body. A green armor appeared a few meters away from him, protecting him. Chen Xuanzhou's pupils shrank and his face revealed a ferocious expression. He mocked, "The Pillheart armor is indeed with you. You actually gave it up to save 2 pieces of trash. I think you've become stupid after comprehending the heaven and earth. Die." The 3 attacks streaked across the sky with unstoppable momentum. Boom. Xiao Huang Haolian's body was completely submerged in the light. His green armor was pierced through in an instant, and he was completely blasted into the ground. A large patch of grassland was lifted up and spread out in a circle. The energy impact was extremely high. The 3 members of the Storm Mercenary group stood in the sky vigilantly, their expressions grave. "Is he dead?" Zhang Yunfeng asked in a deep voice. "I can't even detect a trace of his aura." Ouyang Qi's eyes were filled with excitement as he said, "He might really be dead. After all, if the 3 of us attack him together, even a real Marshal Supreme won't be able to take it." Zhang Yunfeng frowned and asked suspiciously, but the Pillheart armor seemed to have withstood a large part of the power. That was the 8th rank armor that Gu Feiyang had refined for him back then. It was enough to withstand the full-force attack of any one of us 3. Even if we can stop one person, what about the other 2? Ouyang Qi snorted in disdain. "I can't sense his aura at all, he's clearly dead." Chen Xuanzhou did not say a word. Instead, he stared at the ground below. A large amount of soil and gravel shook the sky and began to fall. A huge sinkhole appeared below. It was hundreds of meters wide and bottomless. However, with their cultivation bases, they could only see 1,000 miles away. Soon, their faces turned extremely ugly. There was no corpse of Haolian Xiaowang in the black pit. On one of the walls of the hole, a passage appeared. It was obviously created in an instant. Young Emperor Haolian had actually escaped from here. Zhang Yunfeng looked carefully at the 4 walls of the passage and pointed to a ball of bright red soil. "Look, he must be seriously injured." Chen Xuanzhou's pupils shrank and he shouted in a deep voice, "I must kill him this time. Otherwise, I'll be in danger." After he finished speaking, he went into the tunnel and chased after them. Zhang Yunfeng followed closely behind. Ouyang Qi frowned slightly. This passage was short and narrow, like a dog hole. He was extremely unwilling, but he had no choice but to go in. Suddenly, a hand patted his shoulder. He was instantly stunned, and his face turned as white as a piece of paper. Large beads of sweat rolled down his face. It was a man's hand, and he recognized it. It was the hand of Haolian Xiaohuang, who he had chased for more than 10 days and thought had escaped through the passage. Gulp. Ouyang Qi swallowed his saliva, but he still couldn't suppress the chill in his heart. His body actually started to tremble. A faint laugh came from behind him. "Guild leader Ouyang, don't be nervous. You've been following me for so long, so you should take a good rest. When you're asleep, you'll never be afraid." Ouyang Qi opened his mouth in fear and wanted to scream, but he realized that he couldn't make a sound. Then, he didn't feel any pain at all. He just saw a fist reach out from his heart. His eyes were empty as he watched his heart explode, and he gradually lost consciousness. "Fuck your mother, you actually killed your father." "Fuck." Ouyang Qi cursed inwardly as this feeling suddenly rose in his heart. Suddenly, a force rushed out of nowhere and broke the sound lock in his throat. He shouted with all his might, "Young Emperor Haolian is here." This all-out roar reverberated far and wide in the demon land. He seemed to be relieved. His pupils dilated and his head drooped down. He was completely dead. The fist was retracted. A layer of yellow light flickered on it, and it was not stained with any blood. Young Emperor Haolian looked at Ouyang Qi's body indifferently. "You're a real man." He took out a demonic beast and placed it on the ground, followed by a spirit rat. He patted their foreheads and said, "My head was indeed screwed today. In order to save the two of you, I even lost the pill heart armor that my master left me. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have tried to comprehend the damn rules of heaven and earth. That martial emperor might as well not want it." His eyes were filled with regret and heartache. The demonic snake and the spirit rat seemed to have understood his words. They quickly burrowed into the ground and disappeared. Cough. Cough. Young Emperor Haolian suddenly coughed violently, continuously coughing out blood. His eyes were filled with killing intent. The joint attack of the three men from the Storm mercenary group had indeed caused him internal injuries, but what annoyed him the most was the complete destruction of the pill heart battle armor. Gu Feiyang had personally refined it for him back then, and it was the only thing that he missed now. Chen Chuanzhou. He gritted his teeth and his eyes were filled with killing intent. With his strength, if he wanted to kill this person, he could have done so long ago. However, he had a powerful enemy by his side who could constantly urge him to move forward. That was why he had been playing around with the Rainstorm mercenary group. He did not expect that he would damage the only profound level weapon his master had left him today. His face was so dark that it was frightening. Chen Chuanzhou's and Zhang Yunfeng's auras came from the tunnel. Xiao Huang Haolian was slightly worried, so he turned into a beam of light and escaped. At this moment, he was seriously injured. If he stayed, he would only die. "You want to run? Let's see where you can run to this time." Chen Chuanzhou's figure quickly appeared and chased after Xiao Huang Haolian. He was a 9-stars martial supreme and was extremely powerful. He was about to catch up with Xiao Huang Haolian in a few flashes. All of a sudden, a large number of 5-element spirit-devouring rats surged out from the demon plains. In the blink of an eye, they had emerged from the grass and flapped their wings as they surrounded Chen Chuanzhou. What's going on with this? Chen Chuanzhou was shocked. Zhang Yunfeng, who was behind him, was also being attacked. Both of them felt somewhat baffled. Although these stage 3 existences could be wiped out as easily as a spider's web to them, there were too many of them. "Bastards, all of you shall die." Chen Chuanzhou threw a punch and half of them were immediately reduced to ashes. However, the spiritual rats that blotted out the sky and covered the earth surrounded them again without any fear of death. The two of them went on a killing spree in both shock and anger. Soon, they had killed all the tens of thousands of 5-element spirit-devouring rats in the sky, leaving not a single one behind. However, Haolian Xiaowang's figure had completely disappeared. "I'm angry. What was going on? What the hell is going on?" Chen Chuanzhou was furious. He looked at the black pile of dead spiritual rats on the ground and roared in anger, "How come that kid can summon a spirit rat? How did he do it? How come I didn't know about it after so many years of fighting?" Zhang Yunfeng's face was also gloomy and ugly. He said in a deep voice, "This is bad. The demon plains is so big. How can we catch him if he runs away?" Chen Chuanzhou's face was ashen. After sensing for a while in the air, he pointed in a direction and said, "It's this way." "Why are you so sure?" Zhang Yunfeng was stunned. Chen Chuanzhou snorted coldly. "There's something strange about this area. I followed that kid here, and the spiritual qi became thicker and thicker along the way. I don't know where it leads to. And that direction is where the spiritual qi is getting denser, that should be the direction that kid is going." The two of them immediately turned into a ray of light and headed towards the place where the spiritual qi was getting thicker. Just after the two of them disappeared, a figure slowly walked out of the empty sky. He was wearing a luxurious brocade shirt and a blue dragon ribbon tied to his waist. He had a tall figure and a dignified appearance. The most eye-catching thing was the huge pearl embedded in the ribbon, as if he was afraid that people didn't know he was rich. He held his chin with one hand and muttered to himself, "Xiao Huang Haolian is being hunted down. Should we save him or not?" If I die, and Hua Qianshu finds out, he will definitely come after me. He smacked his head and said in pain, what a dilemma. Save, don't save, save, don't save, save, don't save. The man actually took out a small flower and began to count its petals. When he picked the last flower, he muttered, save. The man was stunned for a moment before he suddenly said, no, this time doesn't count. Let's do it again. He took out a flower that looked exactly the same from somewhere, plucked a petal, and threw it away. This time, I'll have to pick one before I start. Save, don't save, save, don't save, save, don't save, save, don't save. As expected, I won't save him. He was pleased with himself. Then, his figure disappeared in the air, leaving only a faint voice that kept ringing in the air. Even the heavens didn't allow me to save him, so I can't go against the heavens. Let's see how the people from the other chambers of commerce are doing, especially those from the Empyrean One Pavilion. I wonder if my goddess, Ji Qingwan, has come. He really wanted to develop a relationship with her. Next time, Myriad Treasure Store must hold a fellowship party with Empyrean One Pavilion to solve the problem of single men like us, who are older. But what's with those rats? Did something happen to the Rat Emperor? Somewhere in the demon land, the few demons were all sitting cross-legged on the war drums and flying. There were also black masses of rats around them that wanted to attack, but they were constantly shaken away by the sound of the drum. Yu had regained his consciousness and his demonic body had returned to human form, but one of his arms was empty. He looked worriedly at Li, who was healing Shang, and then looked up at the rats around him. Li, how long can your war drums last? Li's expression was not good. She had expended a great deal of yuan qi in her healing. She shook her head slightly and said, it doesn't matter. I didn't use sound waves to force them away. I just caught the frequency of the sound waves that these rats were very afraid of. It didn't cost much vital qi. What I'm worried about is that we can't retrieve the ancient evergreen tree in our current state. What should we do next? Yu and Wing's faces were dark, and they were silent. Shang, on the other hand, was unconscious. He had been sent flying by Yunxiao's great wind and cloud palm. If he were an ordinary person and not a demon, he would have died a long time ago. In the corner of the war drum, Tang Jie had been watching silently. Suddenly, he slowly opened his mouth and said, I've been with all of you for quite some time now. According to my observations, you don't seem to be members of the monster clan from the illusory realm of stars and moon. The few of them frowned. Li turned around and said, what do you want to say? Tang Jie smiled slightly, and the demeanor of a young master suddenly returned. He said, what I want to say is that since you are not from the illusionary realm of stars and moon, you seem to have nowhere to go in your current situation. Why don't you join my Four Extremes sect? With my status and identity, I will not let you down. You looked at him with disdain and laughed, do business with your Chamber of Commerce? Tang Jie blushed and explained, you may not know the situation of the Merchant Union. The strength of the Merchant Union is not inferior to those super forces, and the Four Extremes sect is the leader of the Merchant Union. With your help, it is very possible for us to unify the Merchant Union in the future, suppress the 7 super forces, and become an existence like the Holy Region and the Sea of Soul Formation. And so the Four Extremes sect has such great ambitions. You revealed a look of realization, and the rest of the people also looked at Tang Jie with a sneer, as if they were looking at a fool. Tang Jie was stunned for a moment before he immediately understood. It turned out that the other party was trying to trick him into telling the truth. After all, he was still too inexperienced. His face turned red all of a sudden as he angrily said, so what if you're ambitious? Which force in the Merchant Union doesn't want to be the boss? If you have the strength and are willing to help me, the realm of heavenly martial arts will be yours in the future. The realm of heaven martial arts is everyone's pride. Yuan Sun couldn't help but mock as well. He walked over with a smile and said, I don't want the realm of heavenly martial arts. I only want you, little brother. Tang Jie's expression changed drastically as he hurriedly hid behind several big demons. Stop fooling around. Li rebuked. I'll kill whoever causes trouble again. What do we do now? She asked, looking at Yu. Yu was also silent. He took out a few crystal containers, opened the lids, and the pungent smell of blood spread. He said, let's find a place to rest first. We'll decide the situation after everyone has recovered their strength. He poured all the blood in the crystal vessels into his mouth and swallowed it. Soon, his skin turned red like blood. Yu suddenly cried out loudly, his face filled with malevolence and pain, as if the blood in his body had played an extremely powerful role. Heat waves gushed out of his skin, and his whole body was red and transparent. Tang Jia looked at Yu in horror. On the shoulder where the arm was cut off, blue veins began to grow, like the tentacles of an octopus. Then, these blue veins condensed into a ball and fused together little by little, finally turning into the shape of an arm. Tang Jia and Yuan Sun were both taken aback. Although it was not impossible to regrow a broken arm, it was also extremely difficult. It required a sky-high price of materials and a powerful alchemist to do it. It was unheard of for him to grow an arm after drinking a few bottles of blood. Even Li, who was also a great demon, had a look of surprise in his eyes. Who? Yudit took a deep breath. His entire body was wet, soaked in his own sweat. He took out another purple glass container, which also contained some unknown blood. Yu stared at it for a long time and wanted to pull out the stopper a few times, but she resisted the urge. Li glanced at the purple glassware and said, the blood of the 9 heavens realm? Yu nodded, that's right, and it's the essence of blood. A whole 9 heavens realm master only refined this small bottle. Tang Jia and Yuan Sun took a step back in shock, their faces filled with fear. The essence of blood could only be extracted from blood. If a creature died, its blood would instantly lose its essence, and it would be useless no matter how you tried to refine it. In other words, the bottle of blood in Yu's hand had been refined by drawing the blood of a martial emperor. Li was also greatly shocked and said, this blood Kasaya. Yu's grip on the glassware tightened, as if he had touched something. He closed his eyes and said expressionlessly, this is my master's blood. Everyone was shocked and stared at him with wide eyes. Li was stunned for a moment and seemed to understand something. She then said, since that's the case, you should keep it. Your current body can't withstand the impact of this blood. I'm afraid it will backfire, so you should find the best opportunity to take it. Don't let down your master's expectations for you. Yu's face turned pale again. With a flash of light, the bottle of purple blood disappeared. Actually, you can try his blood. The unconscious Shang had woken up at some point, but his face was extremely pale. However, he still had that habitual smile on his face as he pointed at the pale-faced Yuan Sun. He has the aura of my monster mother in his body. If you suck his blood, I'm sure there will be an unexpected effect. Lord Shang, you're awake. Li was overjoyed when he heard Shang's words. Shang shook his head with a bitter smile, indicating that he was not in a good state. His eyes were full of worry. You must be joking. Yuan Sun's expression changed drastically as he retreated under everyone's gaze. He said in fear, don't come over. I'm afraid that my blood will poison you to death. Just now, you actually joined forces with the enemy to deal with us, Fu said coldly. We haven't even settled this score yet. He reached out with his large hand and grabbed Yuan Sun, who had no more strength left, and directly lifted him in front of you. You looked at Yuan Sun, his brows furrowed. He did not seem to notice anything out of the ordinary, but he trusted Shang's words. He took out several bloodletting tubes and inserted them into Yuan Sun's arteries. Yuan Sun was suppressed by the talisman's aura and couldn't move at all. Those tubes were cold and pierced into his body, and although it wasn't very painful, seeing his own blood gushing out like a spring, it still made him shiver in fear. He cried out in pain, although my body is that of a man, I have a woman's heart. You can't do this to me, woo woo woo. Pa. Fu felt that he was too noisy and directly slapped him unconscious. Very quickly, more than half of Yuan Sun's blood had been lost, and it was about to be filled up. Yu took out a formation disc and carved a few strange symbols on it. He began to refine the blood essence. A large amount of blood was poured above the symbols. It was pulled by a force and condensed into a round ball, constantly condensing. Yuan Sun was like a deflating balloon, beginning to shrivel up. His skin was wrinkled, and he seemed to have aged by many years. The profound level weapon that was inserted into his body was very strange. Other than absorbing his blood, it was also extracting his profound qi. Don't kill him, Shang said indifferently. You can recuperate and slowly draw his blood. Li said, is this Shuekong acupuncture? If we draw out their profound qi and raise their blood, the quality won't be as good as before. If this person has no other use, you can use him to make pills, Yu said calmly. Even if he only has the strength of a martial honor, the pills he can refine will be pretty good. Tang Jia looked at the way he said it so casually, as if he had done it often, and his whole body was cold. He looked around anxiously, but there were only spiritual rats. He didn't know why he didn't see anyone from the Four Extremes sect. Under the continuous refining of Yu, the ball of blood gradually condensed into a blood bead, almost becoming solid. Tang Jia felt like vomiting when he saw this. It's almost time. Yu picked up the bead and looked at it, then threw it into her mouth and swallowed it. How is it? Li said. Yu closed her eyes and began to sense. He was very calm, as if he had just eaten a piece of candy, as if it had no effect. He furrowed his brows slightly and tightly. Suddenly, Yu opened his eyes and a strange light shot out. A faint red light started to spin in his eyes and flashed. At this moment, his heart was beating extremely violently. In contrast to the violent fight in his blood vessels, his body was unusually calm and very comfortable. Yu knew that it was the effect of his blood, so he hurriedly sat down cross-legged and began to adjust his breathing. The aura on his body was completely retracted, as if he had fallen asleep. However, the expression on his face was distorted to the extreme. His mouth kept opening, wanting to cry out, but no words came out. He was in so much pain that cold sweat kept flowing. Yu is smart, Shang smiled. He knows how to use the strong bodies of us monsters to absorb the essence of our blood and improve her cultivation and physical strength. However, over a long period of time, all kinds of blood poison would also accumulate in the body. The demon transformation earlier was an instant backlash from the poison. However, this transvestite had the aura of his mother's body, which could help you remold his body and remold it. How powerful would he be? I'm really looking forward to it. Li also looked at Yu in shock and muttered to himself, the so-called ancestor of all demons, mother body? The war drum was completely silent. Except for Tang Jia, everyone was sitting cross-legged to adjust their injuries. However, it was a different scene outside the war drum. The miserable cries of the spirit rats were everywhere. They fled from the sound waves of the war drum, flew back after they were far away, and flew back again when they found that they couldn't stand it anymore. After repeating this, many spirit rats couldn't stand it anymore and didn't dare to pursue. Tang Jia looked at the situation outside and sneaked a glance at Li in shock. How strong was the sound wave control technique needed to achieve such a precise frequency? It made the spirit rat scared. All of a sudden, a terrifying aura was released from Yu's body, but it was quickly retracted. Tang Jia was shocked and looked over in horror. He saw Yu gently opening her eyes and her sharp gaze swept over him. It was as if winter had suddenly arrived, and the ice and snow pierced into the bone. Tang Jia's heart trembled. The aura that Yu revealed just now made him tremble in fear. He stared at Yu with his eyes wide open, his face full of shock.